Imagine being trapped on a nearly full flight. 4.5 hours in the air, knees crushed into the seat in front of you, shoulders pinned between strangers, and every inch of space suddenly feels priceless. Now imagine this. Directly behind you sits the only person on the entire airplane with an empty row. 3 wide-open seats. A luxury everyone wishes for. A miracle on a packed flight. And when you, a tall passenger barely fitting into your row, politely ask them to swap seats so all 3 tall people can spread out, they look you straight in the eye and say, "No. I have allergies. No mask. No medical concern. Bare feet on the seat." Just an excuse to keep an entire row for themselves, while you and 2 other tall adults are forced to sit shoulder to shoulder for hours. But what happened next? The flight attendants noticed. They saw everything. And their reaction? Let's just say, this flight exposed more than selfishness. It revealed exactly who people become when space, and decency, are put to the test. Stay with me, because what follows turned a simple flight into a story worth telling. Sometimes the loudest truths about people don't come out during life-changing moments. They show up in the smallest inconveniences, like a simple flight home. This story begins on a 4.5-hour trip back from Mexico. Not a long-haul journey, but long enough for discomfort to expose who people really are. The main couple on this flight are both tall, over 6'2". The kind of height that turns airplane seats into a puzzle of limbs and patience. They're used to it. Used to folding themselves into cramped spaces, used to accepting whatever seats they can afford, used to working as a team to make the journey a little easier. He always takes the aisle seat so he can stretch his legs. She takes the middle seat, not because it's comfortable, but because it makes the trip slightly easier for him. A quiet, unspoken act of love. One of those sacrifices most people will never notice, but deeply defines their relationship. As passengers finish boarding, one spot remains empty in their row, the window seat. A tiny glimpse of hope. Enough space for them to shift around, maybe even breathe a little easier. And right before the last passenger enters the plane, a flight attendant passes by and tells the couple they can spread out if they want to. It feels like a small blessing. But life has a habit of striking in the exact moment you relax. The final passenger who boards is also tall. Someone who fights the same battle against tight rows and limited space. And out of all the seats on the aircraft, his assigned seat is the only empty spot left in their row. Right next to them. And here's where the story turns interesting. Directly behind them sits a passenger who, incredibly, has the only completely empty row on the entire plane. 3 glorious seats all to themselves. A rare luxury on a nearly full flight. The couple politely asks this person if they'd be willing to move to another open row so all 3 tall passengers could have more space. They don't demand. They don't pressure. They simply try to create a win-win for everyone. But the solo passenger refuses. And not just refuses, gives a reason that instantly feels off. They claim they have allergies and need the whole row for space. Yet the person is sitting barefoot. Unmasked. Spread out comfortably like they're at home on a couch rather than in a shared aircraft. Their behavior makes it clear. This isn't about allergies. It's about not wanting to give up comfort. And so the 3 tall passengers, each one needing leg and shoulder room, are now forced to squeeze into one row, shoulder to shoulder, while the person behind them lounges across 3 empty seats, guarding them like territory. When the flight attendant returns and notices the couple didn't spread out, confusion flashes across her face. Then frustration. She quickly realizes what happened. The couple explains, and she immediately understands the situation for what it is, someone abusing a flimsy excuse to keep a whole row to themselves. Trying to reason with the passenger, the flight attendant offers them a mask if they are really that concerned about being close to others. The person refuses again. No mask. No compromise. Just entitlement wrapped in the word allergies. But kindness finds its way even in situations like this. Seeing their discomfort, the flight attendants make an effort to treat the couple with extra care, checking on them, offering comfort, and even giving their whole row free beer. It's a small gesture, but one that softens the edge of someone else's selfishness. What was supposed to be a simple flight turned into a quiet lesson. Sometimes people aren't allergic to anything except consideration. And sometimes, the kindness of strangers is the thing that saves the day. As the plane lifted off the runway, the couple settled into the cramped reality of their row. Their knees pressed into the seats ahead, their shoulders touching just to fit. The tall passenger at the window angled his legs carefully, trying to avoid invading their space even more. 3 people built for height squeezed into an area barely meant for 2. Behind them, the so-called allergy sufferer stretched out across all 3 seats, crossing one leg over the other, adjusting pillows, opening snacks, living in a different reality than everyone else. At times, they shifted so aggressively that the empty seats around them bounced. It became painfully clear that they had no intention of being considerate at any point during this flight. And the irony? There was no difference whatsoever between someone sitting next to them or someone sitting directly in front of them. The distance was the same. The exposure was the same. The risk, identical. Their excuse collapsed under the weight of basic logic. But entitlement often ignores logic. During the first hour of the flight, the couple tried to stay positive. They cracked jokes to each other silently. Tried to stretch without bumping into neighbors. Watched as cabin crew walked by again and again, giving them sympathetic smiles, the kind that silently say, "We see what's happening. We know." At one point, a flight attendant returned, leaned down, and whispered an apology, not for anything she had done, but for what they were forced to endure. After that, the couple began receiving quieter gestures of kindness, a blanket, extra snacks, refills of drinks, and eventually the moment that would later become their favorite part of the story, free beers for all 3 in the row. Small things, but powerful ones. Because sometimes kindness is loudest when it's whispered. Meanwhile, the passenger behind them kept their miniature kingdom intact. They shifted between lying down, sitting cross-legged, leaning sideways, even placing their bare feet up on one of the seats. Every movement broadcast the same message. This is my space, and I won't share it. But then something interesting happened, something subtle. Other passengers began to notice. You know how energy travels on an airplane, one person's discomfort can spread outward in ripples. People glanced over the seats, exchanged looks, lifted eyebrows. Some shook their heads quietly. The entitled passenger wasn't just isolating themselves, they were isolating everyone else from empathy. And empathy is a powerful thing. By the second hour, the couple had already accepted their fate. They adjusted, shifted, made the best out of a bad situation. What they didn't expect was how much the crew's support would turn this frustrating moment into something strangely uplifting. Their kindness slowly transformed the experience from an annoyance into a story that would one day be told with a smile rather than anger. Then came the moment that summed up the entire flight. During beverage service, the flight attendant reached the row behind. She offered the passenger water, snacks, the usual. They declined, which was normal. But then, almost casually, they stretched across all 3 seats again, elbows wide, as if they owned a lounge. And that's when the attendant said something the couple would remember forever. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't confront them harshly. She simply said, with the sweetest tone imaginable, "Let me know if you need anything, besides more space." It was polite. It was neutral. But it was sharp enough to cut through the air. The passenger blinked, sat quietly for a moment, and for the rest of the flight kept their feet on the floor, no longer sprawled out with the same confidence. It didn't change the seating situation, but it did shift the energy. The plane subtly returned to balance. By the time the flight neared its destination, the couple felt something unexpected: calm. Yes, the situation was unfair. Yes, it could have been avoided by a moment of compassion. But people reveal themselves in moments like these, and this person showed exactly who they were. And yet, so did the flight attendants. So did the tall passenger at the window who tried his best not to intrude. And so did the couple themselves, with patience, grace, and humor. As the wheels touched down, the couple exchanged a look that said everything. We got through it. Together. Sometimes inconvenience exposes arrogance, but it also exposes kindness. And sometimes the person with the most physical space has the smallest emotional one. When they finally stood up to stretch, the flight attendant stopped one more time to thank them, for their patience, for their attitude, for not letting the situation turn ugly. And that became the real ending of the story. Someone on that flight may have been allergic to sharing space. But the couple walked away with something bigger. A reminder that empathy still exists, even at 35,000 feet. In the end, this wasn't a story about airplane seats. It wasn't even about allergies, comfort, or free beer. It was about how people choose to act when no one can make them do the right thing. The person behind them had every opportunity to be decent. A simple act of kindness would have made 3 people's day better, cost them nothing, and changed absolutely nothing about their own comfort. But they chose ego over empathy. Comfort over community. And the excuse of allergies became a shield for selfishness. But here's the twist. While one person showed entitlement, others showed humanity. The tall stranger who squeezed into the window seat without complaint. The couple who stayed patient instead of starting a fight. And the flight attendants, who didn't just see the situation, but validated it, supported them, and used small acts of kindness to balance the injustice. This is the theme that lingers after the story ends. You can't choose how others behave. But you can choose who you become in the moment. Some people fight for space. Some people protect it. But the people who truly stand out are the ones who make room, even when they don't have much to give. And on that flight, in that cramped row, kindness still won.